Hello folks and welcome to Bards and Books. I'm Usman and today we are reviewing Memories of Ice by Steven Erikson. This is book 3 in Malazan Book of the Fallen. The chunkiest book so far. I think it's damn near 1,200 pages. But stellar work here. And, you know, I've been enjoying the series so far, but Memories of Ice has successfully amped up my excitement to continue the series. And I'll touch a little more as to why that is, but whereas in book 1, it was just a whole lot of fun. You know, we got this huge cast of characters, and that book ultimately served as a veritable prologue for the series. And then book 2, where we got some enriching world building and helped me to gain a newfound respect for Erikson's character work. Book 3, this Memories of Ice is really is the point where you decide whether or not this is a journey you want to see through to the end. A lot of people say that, and it holds true. This is a culmination of all the great things we've seen so far, but it really raises the stakes. You know, we get some set antagonists here who I have a feeling we're gonna see throughout the rest of the series. It builds up the dread. People say this is really where it starts, and you should read up to this point to see if you want to continue. And there's some truth to it, really. This is the point where you will decide whether you want to continue with the rest of the series. So, do I think it's absolutely crucial to read up to Memories of Ice? Not exactly. I mean, if you read Gardens of the Moon, and if you read Deadhouse Gates, and you really don't want to continue, this is not something for you. You really don't have to. But this has been the best book so far. It's been my favorite so far. And I'm so stoked to finish off the whole series. So we'll get into what is contained in this book. Like I said, it's a culmination of excellent character work. Erikson's prose. I mean, we've already seen spectacular prose from Erikson, but he really steps it up a notch here. He outdoes himself. And really, this is the first book where I feel as though the title is aptly named. I mean, Memories of Ice gets referenced a whole lot throughout the book, and it can be interpreted in a variety of different ways. But I'll touch on a few of the references later. But yeah, that was fun to see and read about. You know, so far this has been the slowest read out of the 3. 1, because it's longer, and 2, because of that reason with the symbolism and the references. You really have to stop and take moments to appreciate it and just, you know, reflect and all these deeper meanings going on here. Like I said, Erikson truly outdoes himself here, and yeah, it's been slow for the good reasons, for all the good reasons. Now, aside from the prose and the distinct character work in this book, I think the plot is progressing very nicely. We're getting introduced to a lot more new concepts and new inner conflict with characters. It's helped to raise the stakes, like I said, a whole bunch. And we finally get that true sense of dread and foreboding that's going to make the rest of the books just that much more epic. You know, and of course, this book, all the Malazan books, it wouldn't be a Malazan book without those really deep, heartfelt moments, you know, of empathy and rage and, you know, sadness and all those really strong emotions, grief and sorrow. I mean, it's just riddled with it throughout here. So, very dense book, but very enjoyable. But I don't think I can talk anymore without giving spoilers, so I think I'm gonna start with the spoiler section. If you've watched up till this point, thank you so much for tuning in. Read the book, and then you can listen to the rest of my thoughts, but thank you for tuning in up to this point. I really appreciate it, and I will start with the spoilers now. Okay, so I mentioned the references and interpretations in regards to the title, Memories of Ice. So in the prologue, we have a character who is remembering when the landscape was very icy. We have Gethel, who is Hood's new Jagat, entering Omtos Falak, and he becomes filled with memories while he walks through walls of ice. Page 502, and I quote, "The smell of ice on the wind, here there are memories." Page 795, the Tlanamas are frozen between life and death, and it's straight up quoted once again, Only memories of ice. And then there are things that you can interpret yourself, like the union of Dujek and Kaladin Brood against the Panyan Domin, and how they have memories of their long-held feud, which I guess could be interpreted as ice. So those are just a few. Those aren't even all of the interpretations that I wrote down, but this book, it made it that much more enjoyable for me. I don't know. Some people might find that annoying. I have no clue, but that was really nice to see for me. You know, you don't come across a lot of the deeper thematic kind of things like that in fantasy books. So again, Erikson really is one of a kind, and I'm appreciating and enjoying Malazan so much. The other thing I felt very heavily here, like I said, is that dread, that foreboding that's building up, especially with the Warrens being poisoned now by the crippled god, who is actually chained to burn, I believe, you know, the world. So I know the crippled god's going to be one of the main antagonists, if not the main. I know the last book in the series is called The Crippled God, so, you know, I'm assuming we're going to see that god throughout the rest of the series. And shit's getting wild. I mean, with the Warrens. Oh, I didn't even touch on Quick Ben. Quick Ben is another... Man, Quick Ben stole the show here. He stole the show. I mean, I loved Rake in book 1, but man, Quick Ben is the man here. The way he dealt with, what are the names? Boshelane and Corbel Broach. That was just so badass. And I know he's made up of, we learned that he's made up of like 6 or so entities. He's got all these entities within him. I'm curious to see if we're going to get some strong character work from him in terms of, like, you know, those entities battling within him, or how his personality will develop, you know, where his story is going to go. I don't know if we're going to get that. It would be very cool if we do get that. I'm looking forward to seeing where Quick Ben goes. Rake wasn't in this one that much, which, you know, is fine. The character that stood out the most to me in this book was the Maib, the mother of Silver Fox. And I think she is one of the most interesting and unique characters I have read about recently. Well, for a long while, actually, because you don't typically get that here. You don't typically get her POV, you know, at least in a fantasy story, at least from what I've read. You know, the POV of the mother and what she's going through, and the accelerated look at the cycle of life, you know, that she's kind of battling with, and her trauma, her grief. I really appreciated that. I liked that. I really like when we get POVs of characters that aren't like your typical characters, that aren't, you know, that can really be thrown off to the sidelines in most stories or books. So, you know, she faces a lot of tough challenges. The theme of motherhood, it was very strong here, and it's something that is sure to touch a lot of people. I mean, everybody has mothers. Everybody, you know, at least most people love their mother. So witnessing her story and her dynamic, feeling as though she has been kind of tossed to the side, it was really touching, and I appreciated that POV a lot. I hope we get more things like that from the rest of the Malazan books. Some big developments. I was speaking of Rake earlier. We don't get too much from him, but we do learn a lot more about his sword, Dragnipur. We learn that, if I remember correctly, it houses his warren, or something of the sort. It has to do with his warren, and there is basically a rent within that needs to be sealed, and the only way you can seal it is by slaying people with the sword so as to steal their souls to seal the rent. That's pretty intriguing. That's like some horror-ish thing going on that's really, really interesting. And it's interesting how we know now that in the end, this sword is going to need to be, I think it's going to need to be destroyed. I like how Perrin is tied to this sword now, and he's basically got his own card in the deck of dragons. I think he's like the master of the deck as well. Some really interesting developments there. I'm sure we're going to get a whole lot more of that explained, because it's very interesting, and we haven't gotten too much, but gotten enough to really plant the seed and Really want to know what's going on there. So another standout scene for me was definitely the death of Brucalion. I hope I'm saying his name right, but the way he went out with his few followers against the Panion, that was very much like a 300 style death, you know, the Spartans. So really sorrowful, really moving. He went out like a champ, and the way Hood came in person to kind of collect his soul, that whole stuff there really took me back to Deadhouse Gates and, you know, the death of Coltaine. The same amount of heartstrings being pulled, the same amount of sorrow I felt. Really cool to witness something like that again, even if it was, you know, heart-wrenching. Now the whole scene with Itkovian serving Wrath Fenner with the reeve, you know, where he chops your hands off, it's like a whole ordeal. They spoke of a priest who was wrongfully served the reeve. And if my hunch is correct, then that sounds like Heberic from Deadhouse Gates, because we know he was a priest of Fenner, I believe, and he got his hands chopped off. So it sounds like that, and if that is the case, then I really want to follow Heberic, see more of him, see what's going to become of him, because his story sounds almost prophetic at this point. So that was a cool little tie-in. Speaking of Itkovian, man, that final scene where he just took away all the pain of the Tlanamas, very moving, very moving. As abrupt as it was, because you didn't really see it coming. At least I didn't see it coming, but as abrupt as it was very touching. The only thing that I was thinking, you couldn't have waited until until the end of the battle. I mean, the Tlanamas could have helped a lot there. But I get it. I understand, like, what Erikson was going for. There is a point to it, you know. That was the whole point, is to do it when it was done, regardless of whether there's a battle going on or whatever. So I understand that there could be a point to it, and, you know, as frustrating as it might have been. But that's a lot of things with these books, you know, and people sometimes see that, but a lot of times people don't, and it really grates at them. But I feel like at this point, especially with Deadhouse Gates, that as well, Erikson has these moments in there, these like debatable, these questionable moments, you know, in terms of characters like Felisin, and in terms of scenes like this with Itkovian and the Tlanamas. It's for a point. It helps to, you know, the reader makes their own choice. It's a very, what's the word? Polarizing. It's like, yeah, I feel like these scenes, this stuff is put in here deliberately by Erikson. I could be mistaken, but it's a very interesting choice. It's a very strong choice, and this is just one of those moments again that provides some deeper reflection, and you have to take a moment to really think about it. That's part of why these books are such a slow read, because it's so dense, and you really got to think about these moments. You know, there's so many conversations that could be had. The last couple characters that I want to touch on are Corlad and Whiskey Jack, of course. Really enjoyed their romance in this. I don't typically like a whole lot of romance, but theirs was done, you know, I mean, it's a military setting. They're both seasoned soldiers, and there's not even a whole lot of time for all that kissy stuff. So enjoyed the romance between them a lot. You know, it was definitely more of a matured romance, which I think helped to make it a lot more enjoyable for me. But very tragic the way Whiskey Jack went out. Very good choice on Erikson's part. I feel like a lot with these, with like soldiers in the military and like sergeants and whatnot, they can be very stubborn, yes, and very selfless at the same time. You know, go take care of other people. Don't worry about me. You know, they keep putting it off. I'll do it later. I'll find time for it later, and eventually it'll come back to eat you. So it was a great tale. I mean, you know, tales will be told of Whiskey Jack, I'm sure. And with Malazan, you don't really know who's actually dead. There seems to be a whole lot of reincarnation. I don't know if Whiskey Jack will come back. He might not. I'm thinking he might not. But again, you just don't know with the whole reincarnation aspect. I enjoy that. I enjoyed Corlat and Whiskey Jack's character work and the tragedy that befell them. Oh yes, one quote I want to share. My favorite quote in this book. I had to take a picture. It's from one of the earlier pages, but basically this touches on the whole military aspect as well, the life of a soldier. And this really touches on the mentality and the way, it just touches on trauma. Trauma is a thing that I like to read about, that, it's just something that touches me deeply. Anyways, here's the quote. Soldiers are issued armor for their flesh and bones, but they must fashion their own for their souls, piece by piece. You really, life experiences, they come at you, and through time, through experiences, you build that armor. You build that armor around your soul, and it only builds piece by piece, through one experience after another. So, there's a lot more that I could discuss with Memories of Ice. Like I said, it's a thick boy. This is 1,200 pages. But I will be doing a live chat with a few other booktubers. Haven't set a date yet, but I will absolutely keep you guys updated for when the live spoiler-filled chat for Memories of Ice will be. So stay tuned for that. I hope to see you there if you have read the book. And I will definitely share with you once we have a time set. I'll share it with you on the channel. So that's going to do it. Is that going to do it? That's going to do it. Yep, that's going to do it for my review of Memories of Ice, Malazan Book 3. So thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. If you like the video, you can like it. Any comments, anything you want to share with me, your thoughts on the book, put it in the comments below. I'd appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm definitely continuing on with Malazan Book of the Fallen, as well as a whole lot of other grimdark and dark fantasy books coming this year. A whole lot of self-pub as well. I've got a video on my self-pub plans, at least for the first half of the year. So you can check that out. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and I'll see you next time.